Hi, seventh grade. So this is the listening assessment you guys took before the break. And I've changed how I'm gonna grade this. So a seven will be an M. I will be able to give you an M plus, but it will be a short response. So for example, in the upcoming quiz, you'll be able to get an M plus if you actually write an answer out instead of just picking from multiple choice. So I decided to make that change. So a seven will be an M. And if you got an M and you're like, I really want an M plus, you're more than welcome to take the assessment again, and you'll see what you need to do in a second. A 6 will be an S plus, a 5 will be an S, a 4 will be an S minus, and anything below that will be an N. So again, M, S plus, S, S minus. So today you're going to be taking notes, and this is for the retake. And the way this works is you'll be able to do the notes on your own, and then come see me at lunch. You'll be able to do it on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for the retake. On Monday, I'm doing another retake for listening, for vocabulary. So again, your retake for listening will happen on Tuesday during lunch and recess. Thursday and Friday, you have to come prepared with your notes already done in order to take the quiz. The two presentations you're going to be doing today are going to be related to the Renaissance because I want to incorporate more of that content into the assessments. So one of them is the art of Michelangelo. A little bit of background on Michelangelo. He lived during the Renaissance. He's considered one of the greatest painters, sculptors, engineers, more like a sculptor in history, not just in the Renaissance, but in history. And you're going to learn quite a bit more about him when we get to him. He did some of the most famous drawings. Here you can see the part of the Sistine Chapel, the creation of Adam. He also did the Pieta. He also did the Statue of David, the Statue of Moses. An amazing, incredible, and very talented human being. The second presentation you're going to do is, or take notes on, is Galileo. He was an astronomer. He studied space, and he also lived during the Renaissance. He lived in the 15 and 1600s. Both of these guys are Italian and also Italian. You'll see that Italy is the center of the Renaissance. So you're gonna do this one first. Take notes. Remember, you are creating your own template, your own notes. You need at least 8 notes. You need the purpose of the presentation. You need the main idea of the presentation. You need vocabulary. You also need inferences, at least 2, and then a drawing for both of these. So you need one sheet for Michelangelo and one sheet for Galileo. So we'll start with this guy.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime event.
You can't go to Italy or Florence today, at any time, and see 25 Michelangelo drawings.
But you can see them now at the Muscarelli Museum of Art at the College of William and Mary. Aaron DeGroft is the director of the Muscarelli.
You can go and see 4 or 5 at the Casa Buonarroti in Florence, but we have 25 masterpieces here. And the last time anything like that was done is over 30 years ago.
The only Michelangelo I'd seen before this was a replica of the David statue at Ripley's Believe It or Not in Florida, which might say something about how familiar his works are to us. Even in his own time, Michelangelo was considered the greatest artist alive.
As far as we can tell, Michelangelo knew he had to be the world's greatest artist from the age of 7.
I'm speaking with John Spike. John is assistant director of the Muscarelli and chief curator of this exhibition. What was he doing at 7?
At 7, the boys were bringing him artist drawings, and he was copying them better than they could. And at 10, he was in the studio of the famous painter Ghirlandaio, and he was correcting the master's drawings that they were being given to copy. And he was showing them around to everyone else, showing how he had done better. Let's look at the Cleopatra, though.
The first drawing we come to is of Cleopatra. It's placed on a pedestal, so you can see front and back.
So here, he shows her.
John explains to me how the Cleopatra drawing is a sort of morality lesson. On one side, Cleopatra is rendered beautiful and seductive, A viper is biting her breast, and her figure is twisted as she gazes to the side. But here's what's interesting.
Now, coming on here to the other side,
There's another drawing of Cleopatra on the back. But in this one, she's not beautiful at all. She's crudely drawn with a hideous and frightening expression. And here's where the morality lesson comes in. On the one hand, Cleopatra, pharaohess of Egypt, may have been seductively beautiful to her suitors.
but woe to he who loses their head. Both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were doomed by their giving in, their surrender to the charms of Cleopatra.
Along with figure drawings, we see architectural plans for churches and libraries. There's a fantastical plan for a bastion of a city gate that seems to be modeled on the pincers of a crab. There's also a plan for a sacred library chamber shaped like a triangle. The last drawing we come to hangs alone in its own section of the gallery. It's a drawing that John has stared at for countless hours.
You're going to catch your breath. Oh.
He's no less moved by it as we approach it this time. It's an image of the Madonna holding Christ, who's nursing on her lap. Mary is looking into the distance with foreboding, as if she's anticipating the death of her son.
It's a bit of mortality on her part that she looks honestly fearful. Other artists don't do that ever. And only Michelangelo is so confident of his direct line to the divine thought that he can take liberties like this.
The exhibition is being called the most important Michelangelo show in the U.S. in decades. Part of the reason it's here at this small museum in Virginia is John's friendship with an 86-year-old Italian woman named Pina Ragionieri. The exhibition is dedicated to her.
Complimenti. My
Complimenti anche a te. Congratulations to you. Compliments.
Pina is the director of the house in Florence where the drawings came from. She also lives there in what is actually the ancestral home of Michelangelo. It holds more of the artist's work than anywhere else in the world. And still, Pina says, most of his works are gone. At the end of his life, he burned the ones he felt weren't perfect. So this exhibition, called Michelangelo, Sacred and Profane, is a rare chance to see some of the masterpieces.
We must not be satisfied of what we look at, of what we see. There is always something very important that goes beyond. And it is particularly evident in Michelangelo's works.
So here, let me see if I can find the Cleopatra painting. It's this one. Okay. So now you're going to listen to another presentation. It's going to be 5 minutes. So please take your time. You are able to use your notes and listen to the audio presentation again during the quiz. So that's perfectly okay. But as you know, the quiz questions are pretty challenging.
Welcome to Bedtime History. This is your host and storyteller, Breck. At night, have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered what it looks like up close? Have you ever looked at the stars and sun during the day and been curious about how they move around space and why the Earth revolves around the sun? Galileo Galilei once looked up in the sky and asked himself the same questions, and spent much of his life trying to discover their answers.
So just to interrupt, so if you remember, one of the things about the Renaissance is that they try to challenge the past, right? They are no longer accepting facts given to them over a period of time during the Middle Ages. Now they are actually questioning, is this all true? And he's one of them.
Galileo Galilei was born on February 15th, 1564 in Pisa, Tuscany. His father was Vincenzo Galilei, a famous musician who was sort of an inventor when it came to music and the practice of music. Galileo's ideas to perform experiments may have started when he was very young with his father, who liked to try out new ideas. When Galileo was young, his family moved to the city of Florence, Italy, and nearby he attended the school and eventually went to the University of Pisa. At the university, he studied medicine and thought he might become a doctor, but he was fascinated by mathematics, the study of math. So instead of studying medicine, he decided to study philosophy and mathematics. After school, Galileo taught math, mostly giving private lessons. At this time, he came up with a new way to weigh small objects and wrote a paper about it. He also began to study motion. Over time, he became more and more popular from his writings and began to lecture, which means to speak about something you are an expert at. He also started studying gravity. It was later written that he did experiments about gravity by dropping two objects of different weights from the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa. When the objects hit the ground at the same time, he showed that objects fall at the same rate. For many years, it was believed an object falls according to its weight, a teaching by the ancient philosopher Aristotle. But many people believe whatever Aristotle had written, so teaching anything against Aristotle made Galileo very unpopular.
Very, very important. Please pay close attention to this. You know who Aristotle is, and these are people that the people of the Renaissance admired, but they were also questioning them, right?
With some people. This was a more difficult time for Galileo because he was short on money and had to do other work to get by. But he had 2 children at this time and continued to study motion. By 1609, he came up with new ideas that went against Aristotle's teaching, making him even more unpopular. Not long after this, he learned that in the Netherlands a device had been invented that when looked through showed objects far away. On his own, Galileo invented a similar instrument, which became known as a spyglass or telescope. In fact, Galileo found a way to create an even better telescope than the first ones that had been invented. Because of this amazing telescope, Galileo became very well known and respected. At this time, he also started using his telescopes to look at the night sky. He used it to draw the moon's phases and showed that the moon's surface was rough. Before this, everyone thought the moon was perfectly smooth. He also discovered new stars and other heavenly bodies such as the moons of Jupiter. Next, he wrote a book about what he found, and this gave him even more fame. But at this time, most people believed that the earth was imperfect and the heavens, the space above the earth, was perfect. They believed that the moon and other planets were perfectly round, and most importantly, that the sun and stars revolved around the earth.
This is what the church was teaching, and anything that went against it was going to be a problem.
With all of his discoveries, Galileo began to prove that this was not the case, that the moon and other objects were not perfectly smooth, that the sun had spots on it, and that the other bodies moved differently than others thought. And with all of that the earth and other planets revolve around the sun, not the other way around. The more Galileo talked about Copernicanism, the belief that the earth revolved around the sun, the more trouble he got into. But he believed it was important to speak up for what he found to be true. After others complained about Galileo to the church in Rome, Galileo traveled there to defend his discoveries. But the church had already sided against Copernicanism, so Galileo was told not to write or speak about it anymore.
So Copernicanism is it's based on the idea of Nicholas Copernicus, who said that the earth is not the center of the universe.
Galileo wrote another book about some of his other discoveries, such as comets and how the moon moves the ocean's tides, and also wrote about why the earth revolves around the sun. When the book was published in 1633, he was told to come to Rome to appear before the Inquisition. The Inquisition was a council who decided what was true and false in the church. They decided to convict Galileo of false teachings and said he would need to spend the rest of his life in prison. Fortunately for Galileo, they let him stay at friends' houses and move around Italy for a time. Galileo continued his work even until he went blind, working with a student who was with him until he died on January 8, 1642. Many years later, Galileo's discoveries about the solar system and the Earth revolving around the sun became accepted scientific fact. Next time you look at the moon, remember what Galileo went through to try and understand the world around him. And remember that learning about the world around you will grow your heart and expand your mind.
Again, these are two Renaissance individuals. One is a scientist, this guy, astronomer, studies space. The other one is an architect, a sculptor, an artist, and they're both from the Renaissance, right? And they both question the past. They're both heavily influenced by the past, but they also begin to question the past. When you are ready with your notes, please come see me during lunch on Tuesday. It is your responsibility to come see me. I will not look for you, especially if you did not pass the not pass the assessment. Come see me Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday with your notes. Please come ready with your notes and a Chromebook so that you don't waste any time, because it might take you up to 40 minutes to take the assessment.